Hello and welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. We're at episode 783. It's being recorded on July 24, 2024. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Josh Walrath.
That's right. You get the three good-looking guys tonight. I'm Kent Burgess.
You know, Josh, you need to grow some facial hair. As you can see, I have a little bit going. Obviously, Kent has a lot more than I do. There you are in the center.
Here's the thing.
Hairless.
I can't grow facial hair. I can't do it. Sorry.
By the way, you can help support PC Perspective, even shows like this that only have 3 podcast panelists, because Brett isn't here. He was unavailable tonight, and Jeremy's on vacation. So now you get the 3 amigos, just the random 3 that were actually available tonight. But we have too much to talk about to cancel the show, so we're going to keep going. And you can support us by going to patreon.com. That's right, patreon.com/PCPer. And just a little shout out to longtime members, K Center, PGK at PGK, and simply Frank. You know who you are, and we applaud you.
Thanks, Frank.
By the way, for the 0 people interested, I'm in my living room. It's a whole thing. My wife is traveling. My son doesn't want to be alone in the upstairs of our house. So instead of hanging out in the basement like I usually do with my little set that I made down there, I'm sitting on the corner of the couch. You can see some of my physical media.
Ooh.
Moving directly to the PC Perspective News Desk, we have a surprising amount to talk about this week, actually. We've got the whole CrowdStrike thing. We've got an update from Intel about, the instability thing. They made a statement, finally. Plus, there's some more information about that. And late breaking news this evening from AMD. Ryzen launch. But let's get into the whole crowd. No, it's fine. There's a million stories out there. This one just happens to be via ZDNet. This is EdBot. CrowdStrike. This is something of a timeline about the outage, total chaos, blue screens on displays everywhere, especially at airports, it seemed. People were being affected by this at a lot of businesses. And it was affecting not just client systems, but servers as well. Anybody who's been following the news obviously knows all about this and how it was just like this endless boot looping kind of problem. And it was exacerbated by the fact you needed physical access, basically, to be able to fix it.
It was just terrible. There were medical offices that encountered this problem. To the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any hospitals, major hospitals, but I know that there were medical offices. I could be wrong, but I personally didn't hear of hospitals. But yeah, Microsoft's catching a lot of flack on it, but it really wasn't their doing. It was all the CrowdStrike security update. And it happened because of something Microsoft has really wanted to not do for a very long time, and that is to give kernel access to outside companies. But because of EU rulings, they have to, and then we get stuff like this.
Yeah, it was a big kind of antitrust thing that Microsoft wanted to limit that and put an API in, and a bunch of people were like, "No, you're limiting our access to this, and you're bad people." And oh, by the way, we're gonna do this, kernel level driver, this .sys file, and it's going to boot up the first thing that when your machine does, and it's going to jack you up, and you're going to like it.
And the funny thing is, the CrowdStrike CEO has already come out and said that Microsoft is going to now try and use this to limit kernel access. We can't let them do this. And it's like,
we just had a really good reason why they shouldn't let you do that. I mean, does Linux kernels allow you direct access like this? I don't think they do.
Well, now, this particular instance didn't affect Linux, but CrowdStrike has previously had an update that bricked Linux, and not quite as badly, but bad enough. So, yeah, Apple, to my knowledge, is the only one that really, really, really limits and blocks out everyone. And if Brett were
which
here,
is
he
BSD
would,
based,
yeah.
right?
The way that Apple handles it, it's very difficult to even do things that you want to do on your own system. So I guess that does make it more secure. But here's a nice article from our second tech.
Can we go back a minute?
What?
Do you remember that Apple commercial ages ago with, I'm a PC, I'm a Mac guy?
Yeah,
and
Justin
Vista
Long
had just come out. Yeah, and Vista had just come out, and the PC guy was saying, "Hey, I want to install something," and then the Secret Service guy, "Do you really want to do that?" "Oh, yes, I want to do that. I got to do this. Do you really want to do that?" And now it's Apple that's doing the "Do you really want to do that?"
So Ars Technica was reporting Microsoft says 8.5 million systems were hit by the CrowdStrike BSOD thing, and they have a USB recovery tool now. So a bootable USB stick. Again, though, you had to have physical access to make use of something like this. One thing that I know has been a continuing source of pain is anybody trying to fly anywhere, especially on Delta. I don't know if it's still going on. When I was looking into this a couple days ago, it was on like day 4 of 1,000 flight cancellations. Their entire scheduling system went down because of CrowdStrike outage. And then when they had to reschedule all the flights, they didn't have personnel scheduled for those flights. So you get to the airport and you're just waiting around while they scramble to try to come up with a pilot and a crew. My wife was stranded at the Detroit airport basically all day on Monday because of this.
Oh, nice.
And then when they landed in Washington, there wasn't a crew to actually unload them. So they were just sitting on the tarmac, just waiting for somebody to show up at the gate. So it'll be fine in a few more days.
Yeah, I guess Southwest didn't have this issue because they're still running Windows 3.1.
I saw that story. That was great. I hope that's their primary OS. I'm guessing they had a fallback to that, but maybe not. It just proves yet again.
I don't know.
That
I have been a little hard on CrowdStrike so far in this story, but in their defense, they are a security company, and it's really hard to get a virus when your computer is in an eternal blue screen boot loop. So success.
Fingers have been pointed at the EU because they created this situation allegedly because they made it illegal for Microsoft to have total control of the kernel because other people said, wait a minute, then they'll be able to have a monopoly on antivirus. I'm sure we'll have all of the details about that when Jeremy returns next week, along with...
yes.
We never actually have learned what Brett does for a living, but he's so knowledgeable about deconstruction of... malware and that sort of thing when he talks about the security corner portion of the show that I'm sure he's very up on all of these things. So we'll ask him about it next week.
Yeah, all I can really say about the CrowdStrike that hasn't been said so far is I have never been happy until last week that my company used Cisco and Global Connect. But for one day, I was thrilled with that fact.
Yeah, my company was looking at CrowdStrike, especially after a couple of guys went to like Dell World, and CrowdStrike was there, selling everybody on their services and what they did, and how good they were, and how everything was copacetic, and you go with them for a reasonable price, and the compare it to you have to have Carbon Black and Cisco and all these other things to get everything that they give you. And so there was a big push internally. We should do CrowdStrike. And thank goodness we didn't get to those meetings.
Our next news story is, of course, Intel's update to the instability reports for Intel 13th and 14th generation processors. Here it is at the Intel support forums, and an employee here on the 22nd writes, based on extensive analysis of Intel 13th/14th gen desktop processors returned to us due to instability issues, we've determined that elevated operating voltage is causing instability issues in some 13th/14th gen desktop processors. Our analysis of returned processors confirms that the elevated operating voltage is stemming from a microcode algorithm resulting in incorrect voltage requests to the processor. So we're talking about a microcode patch to address the root cause of exposure to elevated voltages, continued validation, and of course their commitments to their customers, et cetera, et cetera. But not getting into specifics as to the voltage, at what point is the voltage unstable exactly. I know Gamers Nexus has started this whole oxidation conversation that's out there, which may or may not be an issue endemic only to certain 13th gen or processors made in 2023.
2023, yes.
That just doesn't make any sense, the whole oxidation thing, because when exactly is this silicon exposed to oxygen? I mean, especially after use, because it's bonded to the substrate, and there's nothing getting in there. Now, it's kind of interesting. A couple of weeks ago when this first started coming up, someone asked me, what do you think it is? And I thought, the way it sounds like it's some of the low level levers of that they use internally to get the performance up there, so it's approaching the ragged edge. And at this time, I think they were just way too aggressive with it. And sure, it may have worked a while, and maybe in certain instances that it wouldn't blow up in some of their internal testing, but they probably had better cooling. They probably had, it latched onto the top of the CPU better than what you get. I mean, the amount of play in the current Intel LGA sockets is insane. So I think it is just a low level thing, and they're going to try to fix it with microcode and BIOS changes. But this is going to be a huge learning experience for Intel, because this is just nuts. This is a horrible bit of QA QC that they dropped the ball on, and it's going to cost them a lot, because there are estimates of up to 50% of these chips have become unstable through just regular use.
So over at Igor's lab, there's some leaks here, allegedly like internal discussion about this issue, and we've already read the official Intel statement via the Intel community, but there was a little bit more information about this, including something about the actual voltage limit. Here we go. Intel is validating a microcode update to limit VID requests above 1.55 volts as a potential future corrective action, targeted for production release in mid-August to NDA customers. Early testing by Intel on a small number of benchmarks indicates minimal performance impact due to this microcode change. So if that ends up being the limit, that's what they've determined is the safe limit, then the kind of voltage calls that we were talking about last week, I know Kent and I think we had a brief discussion about this, like just in excess of 1.6, 1.65. I've even seen 1.7 requested. It wasn't actually provided, but
right.
Just that kind of voltage, there's a reason why back in the day you were discouraged from heavily overvolting your processor because of silicon degradation. And now we have just off-the-shelf CPUs that have just crazy voltage calls.
And this is Intel 10 nanometer stuff, right? Or their new 7.
Yeah, no, it's
7.
The one that's branded as 7, yes.
1.55 is a lot of power for that process tech. That's just kind of ludicrous.
The thing that, and I talked about it last week, I talked about Billzoid's video where he was talking about the voltage issue. And, there were questions out there. People were asking the question, well, this is happening on server motherboards and it's happening on non-overclocking motherboards. But the thing they're not looking at is the fact that it's not what the motherboard is set to do. It's what the processor is asking the motherboard to do. And so the processor is saying, give me this voltage. And the motherboard, even server motherboards, which are designed for stability, of course, they're going to go, well, okay. And so they're feeding this voltage. And then that seems to me like it's almost like a smoking gun. But yeah, if the processor is asking for this much voltage, it doesn't matter what motherboard it is, unless people go in and they're actually undervolting and overclocking or just undervolting. Now, Steve did a video just the day before Intel released their statement. He did another video on it where he had talked to another large Intel customer. They had a list of their processors. This is a huge Intel customer, but he could not tell us who it was. Although Intel did state later that, yes, that is one of our customers. But they were showing the processors that the SKUs that they were having trouble with. Now, they didn't list any of the 14th gen, only the 13th gen. But it was most of the 13th gen, with the exception of the KS. The KS was not listed. And I'm guessing that's because with the higher quality silicon that they're, sort of cherry picking out of those wafers, the KSs are requiring less voltage, at least.
Yeah.
Again, I'm speaking from my personal experience. Mine is not calling for anywhere near this much voltage. It runs 6.1 up to 4 cores and 5.8 all cores on the performance cores at a 1.412. Is what it actually reads, but I've got it set for 1.415. I actually did some checking to make sure I remembered. But at VDroop, when it's like under a Cinebench load or a really heavy load, when all the cores are loaded, it VDroops down to about 1.375. And it is absolutely stable. I actually earlier today ran the test that Robitech is talking about to see if you have a problem, which where people are encountering the issues with these is like when they're unpacking. And he said to download, it only works if you've got an NVIDIA card, but get a new NVIDIA driver and then install it about 5 times in a row. And if you're having a problem, one of those installs will fail in the test that they've done where he is. So I ran that today, had no trouble. And the temperatures were fine. But yeah, so it really looks like it's these not just the SKUs, but the lower quality silicon that is having to call for more voltage to hit the clocks that they're supposed to hit.
Yeah. By the way, about that oxidation thing, Intel PR, this is an update to the post at videocards.com. Quote, "We can confirm that the via oxidation manufacturing issue affected some early Intel Core 13th gen desktop processors. However, the issue was root caused and addressed with manufacturing improvements in screens in 2023. There's more to the quote if you want to read it over at videocards.com or wherever else it's been posted. But so, yeah, there was some of that apparently, but the overall issue is just that these things are being pushed too hard because obviously that's an insane amount of voltage to be throwing to get the boost speeds that the clock speeds they wanted. This was all wasn't this just because Intel had to do this on the process technology they had at the time to compete with AMD because they're stuck on their 10+++ rebranded Intel 7.
Yeah, they had to, again, push it to the ragged edge, and the ragged edge finally just pushed back. And, like I said, you had all these controls and these levers and these, aspects of microprocessor design that can extract like every ounce of performance out of it. But it comes to a point where they've just have pushed it too far to hit these performance metrics where, maybe some of their simulations said, yeah, the silicon can handle it. But, the real world is not a simulation. Well, according to some, but, it's a massive mistake by the product managers of of this to try to hit these performance levels that you're not going to be able to do. They would be far better off if they just said, yeah, we're a little bit slower, but you know what? Our CPUs don't die on you.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about Intel already on the show and for the last few weeks. Let's talk about AMD and that 9000 series Ryzen CPU launch, which has now been, as of this evening, officially delayed. Only by a couple of weeks, but the company has pushed back the launch. Now, I got an email about this. This is the statement as reprinted here at videocards.com. This is only going from the 31st to August 8th for the Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 7, and August 15th for the Ryzen 9 SKUs. And, quote, "We appreciate the excitement around Ryzen 9000 series processors. During final checks, we found the initial production units that were shipped to our channel partners did not meet our full quality expectations. Out of an abundance of caution and to maintain the highest quality experiences for every Ryzen user, we are working with our channel partners to replace the initial production units with fresh units. As a result, there will be a short delay in retail availability," etc. So this would explain why I think there's been a delay in getting these processors into reviewers' hands. I know there's been some alleged performance leaks, but those are engineering samples, and obviously the final shipping silicon will be different if they're having to make some kind of adjustment. I don't know if this is just silicon or if this is also like AGESA microcode AGESA microcode maturity. Probably just the silicon, though.
Well, they said that there is an AGESA update that they're willing to do because there are some memory issues, but that's not official.
Yeah. Right. Since AMD is recalling the initial shipment and is replacing them, then any of these early gaming tests leaked by a YouTuber, as it says here at WCCF Tech, can be taken with a grain of salt, because obviously they're not happy with something about the performance here. And the big story had been, if you look at these leaks from some engineering sample, that the Ryzen 7 7800X3D was outperforming the new Ryzen 9 9900X. I don't think that's the messaging they necessarily want. And obviously X3D in certain situations is going to outperform non-X3D parts. But I wonder how much of this has to do with a combination of the silicon issue, whatever that was, and the fact that they may or may not be having some issues with memory OCs, AGESA microcode maturity, that sort of thing. So it's just another AMD launch where we need a little bit more time for it to be ready.
Well, I think this just kind of tells you how complex modern CPUs are, because the errata pages are just massive, and the things you have to work around to get these damn things to work. I mean, they're what? How many? 17 billion transistors per CPU or whatever it is we're at now. I can't remember offhand. It's just nuts. It's a lot of complexity. And, we're still human. Our design software is still designed by humans. So it's no joke that getting these things to market and that they even run in the first place is a damn miracle. So take that all with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to make excuses for the industry, but this is where we're at. I mean, if you really want a simple, fast CPU, they can do that. It's just going to be simple and not very fast. I mean, sure, you can get the clock speeds up there, but actual performance, not so much.
Didn't AMD actually release a statement, or one of their people said just about a month ago that for gaming specific workloads, the 9000 series was not really going to beat the existing X3D parts, and if the gaming was the focus, to wait for the I mean, he didn't say that, but that was the gist of it. If you're gaming specific, then you should wait for the 9000 X3D or go ahead and buy a 7800 X3D. But, as we know from that story when we talked about it originally, not everyone is a gamer, and some people do other things with their processors. And yeah, I actually, it's so funny. I was looking at this story earlier today, and also looking at the Intel story over the last couple of days, and it's just the amount of not just fanboyism or preferring one brand over another, but just blatant hatred of the commenters. I've seen everything from Intel is finished, which if they think this is going to finish Intel, that's just stupidity.
But you are an Intel fanboy. Let's just be fair.
I will admit that. I will admit that. But there's also the people that are just like, this is despicable and horrible of AMD to do this. And I'm just like, I think this is absolutely the right thing. They found an issue and they want to make sure the product is right before they drop it. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
They're doing it. And let me ask you a question. Good, I'm unmuted. When was your last AMD purchase?
5800. Actually, no. That's for my personal use. 5800X on an X570i ITX motherboard about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago.
So bad.
And for people that I have built for, about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah, but your primary everyday system, though, that probably has
my
been
primary
Intel for
everyday
a long
system
time.
has been Intel since X99.
Okay.
Wow.
I see.
Anyway.
Yes. Our own personal biases are, they directly color our commentary, obviously, but are irrelevant.
I mean, they do. And I the thing is, I try to be upfront with it, but I still trying to be balanced with my assessments.
Look, all they have to do is look at the background color, and we know which side you're on. Okay, it's not subtle. It's if you talk about GPU, suddenly the lights turn green behind you. I've noticed it.
I've got the wind chip background.
Ooh,
that kind of brownish gray.
Okay, now he's got red. He's just messing with us.
Anyway,
I've got yellow. I think that means Cyrix or maybe like the IBM.
Maybe.
I think we're going to pause here for a word from this week's podcast sponsor.
It has been said that security is inversely proportional to convenience, and that's basically true. Put another way, it has often been difficult to get everyone in an organization on the same page with security because people tend towards doing the easiest thing possible to comply with security procedures. Witness the proliferation of using 123456 as a password, for example. Employees, contractors, and C-suite execs will bring in unmanaged devices, unsanctioned applications, non-employee identities, or even actively work around security just because it's inconvenient. Your tools are out of date and probably do not react in those situations. But 1Password Extended Access Management can bring all these unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. It can ensure that user creds are strong, every device is known about, and every app has proper visibility. Traditional IAM or MDM identity and device management has issues that 1Password Extended Access Management can help solve for the way that we all work today. And it's available now to companies with Okta and later this year with Google Workspace and Microsoft Entra. 1Password is now far more than just a password manager, and with Extended Access Management, they now support businesses of all sizes to secure sign-in from every app on every device. Check out the particulars at 1password.com/product/XAM. That's 1password.com/product/XAM.
One of the byproducts of having only three of us here and no Jeremy or Brett who just relish the insecurity corner segment isn't that we're not going to have it at all. We could just skip it. But it's very short. There's only one story in there, and it's CrowdStrike again.
Yeah.
But
we've already talked about it.
We have what's worth mentioning here, I guess, is that, of course, the incident has been leveraged for malware delivery, phishing, and scams. And we're probably going to continue hearing about this as it trickles down to more of the mainstream audience. Let's say that same at-risk population that Kent was so passionate about last week. If you or someone you know is susceptible to being duped on the internet, this just provides yet another vector. It's like, oh, click here to reset your CrowdStrike access. A bunch of different agencies and companies are reporting on this. And we already talked about the outage, but that's another interesting aspect of it, of course, is that anything that's in the news will be used against you in your internet travels. So, for the at-risk population out there. Now, I was going to put this in. That was, by the way, the end of Insecurity Corner. Sorry. This is going to be an incredibly short podcast, I'm afraid, because there's almost nothing to talk about in the Gaming Quick Hits section either.
And not only that, but we're not really talking over each other very much.
No, there's more of the, I won't call it awkward silences, but there have been more periods of dead air than usual. So we're going to go into Gaming Quick Hits now, which is only one, just like Insecurity Corner. And this is actually kind of a big deal for us because invariably, when we do Gaming Quick Hits, Brett has something from Humble Bundle. We've been talking about Humble Bundle for years now. And the news today was that they have laid off their entire staff.
Oh, that sucks, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it was only 36 people. They were posting about it. The laid off former employees were posting about this on social media. Yeah, they're restructuring the company. I guess that means fire everyone and then have AI run it. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if we'll be making any of those Humble Bundle picks anytime soon, unless they're just going to keep going. Maybe they had enough stuff in the tank. Or is this just over?
Owns them? I forget.
The parent company of like IGN and Eurogamer, it's Ziff Davis.
Ziff Davis. Yeah, ZD.
The PR rep for Humble Games confirmed to Engadget that the company would not be shutting its doors as a result of today's restructuring, adding that both ongoing and upcoming projects would continue to be supported and published by the studio, along with some, typical nonsense about the volatility of the industry and growth and greatness, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
It is sad. It's sad when people lose their jobs. What I'm getting sad about is the fact that unless we do something quickly, this podcast will end up being about 40 minutes long, which is fine.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
It's been a slow week. I mean, we've had a lot of weeks of products coming out and insecurity news and, big movements and this Intel thing. And it just like, it's like we finally took a break. I mean, usually the first, 10, 15 days of July, a lot of companies let people have like 2 weeks off. It's kind of a dead period. And I'm all for that. So, sometimes you just gotta do nothing. Let the brain rest. And for you to, edit a 2-hour video, it's going to be like breeze for you, man.
I may do it before I go to bed tonight if it ends up being this short. But
sweet.
We can drag along the the picks of the week.
Well, as I say, I've mentioned before, I work in the mental health field, and I like to think of this week's Insecurity Corner as perhaps a safe space for those that weekly get depressed and driven to drink and other hard substances over the plethora of stories we usually throw at them. So you're welcome.
Maybe it's just a nice sorbet that cleanses the palate of all the tech unhappiness that we've had for seemingly weeks and months and years on end.
I am getting a message, I'm sorry to interrupt there, that the Humble story is that it's just the Humble Games publishing end of the business that everyone's laid off. The Humble Bundle is still going to be there and be fine. It's just the games publisher. portion of the business.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So we'll still have those deals, but I didn't even realize they published games, honestly.
Me neither.
I didn't either.
It's time for picks of the week, and we're going to try to drag this out as long as possible to make the show feel longer than it will actually be. So Josh, please get us started.
Okay, so wife didn't tell me that her secondary hard drive crashed. And so I was going to upgrade her machine, and sure enough, the drive with all of her very, very precious photos and everything that, was meaningful to her was gone. And it's a well-known issue with Western Digital blacks of a certain age. And it was weird because I had bought a new SSD, a 2 terabyte SSD for her. I was going to start transferring everything over, but I was a week too late. But this product really saved my bacon because I was able to recover pretty much everything off of the drive. And it's PhotoRec, which is one half of... what is it? Test disk. And it's a very easy way to be able to, kind of pull a partition off and then go through and figure out, what all are photos, what are all text, Word documents, whatever. Super easy, super powerful. It took days to recover this drive, but absolutely fantastic program, and I can't recommend it enough, and it's free.
That was shorter than I was hoping for, Josh. So hopefully Kent's pick will be longer. What is that, Kent?
Is that a reflection of something you see in us?
Not at all. Although I will bring up the fact that there has been a headroom disparity this entire show with this 3-up view. There's more space above Josh's head than there is above my head and Kent's head. And it makes Josh look smaller than he is. Josh is not a small man. I've met Josh in person. We've physically made contact with each other, I believe, on several occasions. Though I would not describe it as like intimate contact. I didn't share a bed with him at all. But I don't know why
we did speed walk through Vegas.
We did. And I was surprised and slightly alarmed at how fast Josh walks because I was tired and I was trying to keep up, and he was way ahead of me before I knew what was happening. So, all right, Kent, your pick this week.
So, I've had a Netgear Nighthawk router for some time, and I've been very happy with it. I like the software interface. But it was getting a little long in the tooth. It was Wi-Fi 5. All the outports on it were 1 gig. So I've been looking at upgrading, and definitely most of the computers in the house that are on Wi-Fi are Wi-Fi 6E motherboards at this point. And so, but I also wanted to upgrade the LAN network as well. And so I've been looking at getting a router and a switch, and I was looking, and then I found this product. This is a TP-Link. It's a Wi-Fi 7 router, but it also has 4 2.5 gig LAN ports in the back, as well as 2 10 gig LAN ports and a 10 gig SFP Plus port.
By the way, before we continue, for those listening, this looks like one of those older generation XPS desktops from Dell. You know what I'm saying? Like the silver frame with kind of like a defined waist on the front. This does not look like any router I've ever seen. It's like a mini ITX tower.
It's actually about the size of one of the smaller mini ITX systems. It's pretty good size.
But the 10G, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I found it on sale, and picked one up. The setup was probably as easy as any router I've ever used. I basically went in. It's actually got built in a separate capability for IoT. So I set up a separate IoT network, connected all my IoT devices, ceiling fans, lights, things like that, and our thermostat to the IoT network. So the only thing that has computers on it is the main network. And obviously the Wi-Fi speeds went up immensely. And even the LAN speeds, even though you wouldn't think there would be a benefit, I was capping out about 940 megabits per second previously, and I'm hitting about 1,050 megabits per second now. So on the wired connections from the internet, data transfer from my server, which I've got set up as an aggregate to the router, data transfer has improved an unbelievable amount. I'm really pleased with it. The software is great. The mobile app is fantastic. One of the things I really liked about the Netgear was the mobile app. This mobile app interface is not quite as intuitive as the Netgear, but it does a lot of the same stuff that I loved. Like if a device logs into any of my networks, I get a notification on my phone that says, this device has just logged in to your network. And it doesn't matter if I'm here on the network or if I'm at work, I can actually go in and block that device from the network and quickly change passwords if I need to, anything like that. I'm very pleased with it, especially at the price I got it. The thing retails at $699. I actually got it even a little cheaper than this. I got it at $450. When you consider the fact that a good 2.5 gig switch is going to run you, $40-50. And this was the only, that's what really sold me on this, was it was the one I could find that not only had at least Wi-Fi 6E, but also 2.5 gig network ports. Everything else was still, there would be maybe one 2.5 gig network port, but everything else was 10, 100, 1000. So,
how much did the fact that the LED screen for more fun with up to 3,000 plus customized graphics option, how much did that play into your purchasing decision?
That is turned off.
Oh, you can have the current time or emojis. Look, it could be winking at you. Does it actually update with current weather conditions? It shows
from
the
my
sun
understanding,
or clouds.
yes, it can.
Wow.
From my understanding, it can. But yeah, it's in a server closet. So yeah, I've got it turned off.
Yeah.
And I don't know that. I looked at it and I looked at the different things it could do, and I was just, if if you could actually put something custom in, that might
that would
be
be cool.
Interesting. But
put Josh's face on there.
That's what I always do. If it could, like someone said in the chat, if you could put Scarlett Johansson's voice in there with little talking emoji face, that'd be pretty amazing.
She would get unhappy though, and she'd probably sue the company for using her voice.
There were some permission. So one of the things that I don't like about it, TP-Link, they have a security software that it's you can get for 30 days with it, and then it's a subscription after that, and it's just like, no, I don't want any of that. I'll take care of myself on it. But yeah, it's really it did things I wasn't expecting, and it did much better than I was hoping. So,
does it bother you about their name though? Toilet paper link.
Well,
Is that pretty hefty?
I mean,
is it like 10 pounds of metal and silicon and whatnot?
It's actually quite a bit lighter than I expected it to be. There is an internal fan. Obviously, I cannot hear it. It's pretty inaudible, but this device does produce a little bit of heat because there's some heat that vents out the top.
That's the problem with this 10G stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so but overall, I'm very, very pleased with it. So there you go, a pick that's been drawn out into a mini review. How does that work?
It sounded like a review. That's great. I'm going to now tell a story about how dumb I am, because I have been lured into this false sense of security, and I have not made additional backups of a lot of my key data for a long time because I've been just putting everything on this 5-bay Synology NAS for like 4 years. And it's RAID 5, and I have extra redundancy enabled, so it's just like it's all protected. I could lose 2 or 3 drives and I'd still have everything. And what happens when the entire thing dies, though? Because then I'm scrambling to see if I can find this model, which is discontinued now, of course, and thinking I need to take all 5 of my drives to a new Synology 1019 Plus 5-bay and just hope that it will just rebuild and everything will be fine. But I talked to Brett specifically after the show, I think last week, and I think at that point I was already in the process of ordering a power supply just to see if that would do anything. And after the show last week, I went ahead and tried plugging it in again, and the power supply light would come on, but then it was making a ticking sound. That's
not good. Ticking sound's never good.
No, the power supply brick, which looks like a laptop power supply brick, was going tick, 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 when it was plugged in. Like, this isn't good. So I unplugged that again, and then I ordered one on Amazon, and it was supposed to be here like the next day, and then it was 2 days, and then it was going to be 3 days, and I still haven't got it, and now it's saying it'll be here this coming Monday. So that was the KFD. I ended up ordering the HKY on Amazon yesterday, and I got it today. Went downstairs, plugged it in, and the thing started blinking like crazy, just the power light. So I held that in for a few seconds, and then sure enough, it booted up. It did its thing for a while. It's back online, and I can now immediately start transferring data off of it onto something else. So I have it in more than one place, and I need to look into some kind of online solution as well, because I've gotten really lazy.
Wow, that's lucky.
I'm very lucky because somebody just pointed out a NAS is not a backup. Well, it felt like a backup when everything in the house can talk to it, and it's got RAID 5, and it's got 5 big hard drives in it, and there's like maximum redundancy enabled, and it felt safe. I thought all I had to do was plug it into a UPS, and I'd be super safe, but what about the power supply itself that dies? So everything's back, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get the other power supply. But when the second one ever comes in, if it ever happens, I'll compare the two, see which one gives off less interference, which has less of the obnoxious ultra high frequency noise when you get your ear close to it, which one of them has fewer fake certifications and UL listings on them, and then just return the other, I guess.
My local server, it's media storage, but it's also our local network storage. And I do what you did. I've got it backed up to an single external hard drive. It backs up every morning. But I also have Backblaze, and I back up to Backblaze as well. So that's my redundancy there. But yes, if there's ever a fire, Elizabeth and I have an agreement. She gets the cats. I grab the external drive and our small fire safe that has things like our marriage license and.
But I thought the whole point of the fire safe was that you didn't have to worry about it in a fire, because that's its entire job.
Yeah, have you ever seen pictures of them that have come through a fire? That they're not really truly that wonderful.
I should probably have it somewhere nearby then, if that ends up happening here. I just trusted it. Like, whatever. It's stuff like the marriage license and
for
the deeds of the house.
So under most fire circumstances, they're okay. But if the fire gets above a certain temperature, which many house fires do, they can fail.
All right, so let that be a lesson to all of you to be smarter than me and actually back up your data to more than one place on a regular basis, because my ancient backups from like 3 years ago and 8 months ago and all that stuff are just not going to get the job done. When I've just gotten lazy. It's just so easy to just say, no, just easy to the drive. I have a bunch of other data on other external USB-C like SSDs, but not everything. Yeah, stick it all on OneDrive. That's what Microsoft wants us to do. We're using OneDrive by default. Come on. That is going to do it for this short, but possibly thought-provoking episode of the PC Perspective Podcast. You know, it was just 3 of us this week because if you weren't here at the beginning, I don't know why you'd be listening to the end if you didn't catch the beginning. But just in case Brett was absent, Jeremy's on vacation, so it's just 3 of us podcasting for you because we just feel responsible. We feel like there's a certain amount of momentum. Once the train gets going, it's hard to stop it. Something like that. Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what else to say.
Without all the Apple propaganda and those horribly depressing stories posted up by that Canuck, things go quickly. You know, we're the 3 positive guys and the good-looking ones. Don't forget that.